We're going to switch now to our, what I hope to be a monthly section, our desktop showcase. We've been talking about both distros. Today we didn't have a distro to share. And then desktops, because there are a number of different models of cars or brands of cars, and then models of cars. So the same thing. And we had talked about that we just picked Ubuntu because Ubuntu has 9, now I think it's official 10 different flavors, and each flavor is Ubuntu with icing of a different desktop environment on it. And so we wanted to be able to share some of these with you. Some of them are very similar, not a lot of changes, and you just have to drive it like a car. You know, test this model out, test that model out, you know, and decide for yourself which one is a little bit better. In terms of the desktop, we started out with Cal and Orv doing 2 of the oldest desktops. I probably should have had Orv go first with KDE, which was the very first one, and then followed up with Cal with Orv, but I liked what Cal was going to do with his presentation to start us off. We should have been doing XFCE this month because XFCE is the other original desktop, all came out within the same year and a half of each other. But I was hoping that somebody sitting out there in our audience was an XFCE user and would have been able to share with us the features of XFCE, but nobody came forth. So we're going today with my Mate that I really like and I know. And if nobody steps forward with one of the others, then some of us will have to learn something new, which is a little bit harder because if you're not using it every day, you don't really know it. I did want to just expand a little bit on what we talked about last 2 months about KDE and GNOME, and that they have gone through some revisions from the very beginnings. Orv showed us some really neat shots of KDE in the beginnings, and you could really see how back in the late 90s, you know, the Windows 3 and some of these all kind of had the same look, and they've been fine-tuned over. The KDE, as Cal or Orv said, went from version 1, 2, 3, and then it switched to 4 and became Plasma. With GNOME, it went from 1, 2, 3, and then it jumped to 41, but it didn't go any kind of a big name change like to Plasma. It wasn't a smooth road whenever they made these big changes. A lot of people didn't like it. A lot of people said, I don't like this big, massive change. And for those people who did not like KDE's switch to Plasma, a white knight came to the rescue and said, hey, our team said we didn't like that either, and we are going to continue what was initially KDE 3, and we're going to continue developing that. We're not going to go to this Plasma route. And we have a desktop version called Trinity, and that's because of 3. Trinity is based on KDE 3. So someday we may talk about that one. The same thing happened with GNOME. When GNOME went from 2 into 3, a lot of people didn't like it. Ubuntu didn't like it. They created their own desktop environment called Unity, somewhat based on 3, but not into the new one. And eventually, as Cal showed us, things got better with GNOME in the 40 series, and now I think they're up to 44. And a lot of people like it. Ubuntu went back to it, but there were still lots of people that said, we didn't like what that change was. One group of people that was in the Mint development team said, we didn't like it, but we liked GNOME 2. So we are going to continue that philosophy, that style, and we're going to continue GNOME 2 into modern days, and they call that Mate. Another group said, well, we liked GNOME 3 sort of, but not well enough to go with GNOME 3. So we're going to take GNOME 3, such as what Ubuntu did with Unity. We're going to mold it into a better version, and they've called it Cinnamon. And it's really taken off as a top-notch desktop environment, which we hope somebody will demonstrate. It's good enough that that is the newest one that is part of the Ubuntu family. So not only does Ubuntu have the traditional GNOME 3, it has Cinnamon too, which is based on the previous GNOME 3. So XFC should have been the next one. It's a very lightweight one, and hopefully we'll have that coming up real soon. Today we're going to take a look at Mate. And it's interesting that there's not just one Mate. I said we were going to kind of go with the Ubuntu to try to keep it the same, but I use Mate on the Mint side, and when I went to work on the Mate in the Ubuntu, I said, oh, there's some changes. And that's because open source, people can make changes. So the team that's working on Ubuntu Mate has said, we like to do these things with it. So there are a few things that in the Ubuntu version isn't in the Mint version, but they're close enough. And I might kind of go back and forth. But jump this way. Here we go. So this is the Ubuntu Mate, and I found out if I take this, drag it way down here to the bottom, it doesn't show up. Interesting, new thing to learn. It's in my way though. Okay, of course we are in the standard thing, so I've got to get out of this lock screen. Oops, wrong keyboard. And this is the jellyfish. This is the code name for 2204 for all versions of Ubuntu. It's the jelly something or other. They do animals and some kind of an adjective. So this is like the jolly jellyfish or something. And what I want to point out first off is when we saw the GNOME one with Orv, they had one bar across the top that had a few icons in the top for system and one button called activity. And that's all. When we went to KDE, Orv showed us, Cal the first time, Orv showed us that KDE has one panel across the bottom. Well, GNOME 2 had two panels, one across the top and one across the bottom. And the way you kind of easily talked about it was the one on the top were things that you could do. The one on the bottom is things that you were doing. And so in this case, the top panel is what you can do. And then when you do something, it shows up in the bottom. Now, I need you to know that around the outside, the blue is my computer. And I'm doing this because that way I can easily pop up something for the Mint Mate different than the Ubuntu Mate, but the blue is mine. So the greenish is the Ubuntu. That's their kind of their color. So at the bottom, anything that's running will show up at the bottom. For me, anything that's running shows up at the top, and I've got my shortcuts and favorites along the right-hand side. So the bottom has programs, oh, and the workspaces. You can see that Mate says you're going to be doing workspaces. So we're going to have 4 different workspaces showing at the bottom. When Cal did it, he hit the activity button and then his workspaces showed up across the top and he could switch back and forth. This version of a desktop says, we'll just put them right here and you can switch back and forth between them. That's what I've been doing today. On my blue side, I have one workspace that has Zoom running. I had a second workspace that had the last presentation, and I'm on the third workspace, so they aren't all overlapping each other. Up in the system tray, a typical normal system tray with your start button, your clock, volume control, power settings, notification, and should be my internet. Yeah. The calendar, most Linux calendars are just calendars. You just look to see what's the date today and anytime in the future or in the past. As I go into this, you'll see that this one does have the calendar, plus it does have events. And I'll explain why in just a minute or so on that. And at the bottom, we have hide all your folders like everywhere else. At the top, the only really thing that is supposed to be here is the menu, but they included Firefox because they know that one of the most important things you do is internet, and you can add any favorite shortcut like you could in Windows at the top. When I look at the menu, this is going to be a little bit different. This one is called the Brisk menu. It was designed by the team that puts together the Solus Linux operating system, the distro, and the Ubuntu team said, hey, we like that, and we're going to put that menu in ours. Now, I want to go back just to show you a quick review. Slideshow. When Cal showed us the menu system for GNOME, there was the activity button, or he had a dock on the side. Here, the dock is at the bottom, and the checkerboard or the tic-tac-toe board brings up the menu. And as you can see, that he showed us, the menu is just all scattered there. A lot of times they're in alphabetical order, like in Windows. This one, it moves. He showed you that you can move it around to make it whatever order. And the other thing that you can do is he showed us that you can group them together. So this order of things doesn't stay. It's according to how you want to do it. And you can put extras up there, and then you can put favorites down here at the bottom. So that was pretty much it for the GNOME menu. When Orv showed us the KDE, when he clicked on the menu, it was a two-parter, I would say. On the left-hand side, if you click, you got applications in categories. That is probably the predominant way that people like their menus. Categories. Sometimes I don't know what I want, and it doesn't help to look at names, because sometimes names don't really tell you what they do. Putting things in categories, I know right away. If I want to do something on the internet or in the office, I go to that category, then I see the programs that are in that. The second option is places. This is where you go for all your documents or your extra hard drives, things like that. So it's a two-part menu. However, KDE says, we're going to give you another option for people who like it a little bit different. And so another way is they put it into more of a Windows style desktop or a Cinnamon style desktop, where on the left-hand side, you have your favorites, your control numbers, and then you have your categories, and then pops out to the side. So that KDE gives you another option that way. And there's a third one. This is a little bit, I had to kind of make it bigger, so it was a bigger screen, so it's a little bit distorted. Their third option is more of a Windows 8 tablet kind of menu, where you have your favorites on the side. All of your programs are alphabetical, but you still have categories. And for me, that's the biggest negative for Windows, is everything's in alphabetical order. I don't always know what I want. Categories helps me do that. So that just shows you that even in a desktop environment, they can give you options. GNOME didn't, and they give you 3. Now, this is, as I said, the brisk menu that was brought by this team. But if we look at my menu, which is over on the side, this is the one that I really like and why I use it. This menu comes in 3 parts. This is Mate's other menu, main menu. You have your places, your system, and then your applications. You also have a section for favorites. You can set the menu that when you click on it, it defaults to the favorites, or I have it default to applications. I can get a second choice menu if I choose. And that's what they call the compact menu. And that just has all of the stuff in a narrower pop-out menu. So it gives you lots of options to which you want to. But we'll talk about how in this one, you get a lot more choices just because the Ubuntu guys said that. A question asked before is right-clicking. This is pretty much the standard for the distro, or for most distros. When you right-click on the desktop, you get your create folders and launchers, organize, lock them, and of course, the change your desktop background, which I'll do just in a minute. When you do that, just like Orv said, Ubuntu gives you a lot of different pictures. This one has more in it than KDE had, but he pointed out you can always get more, and you can get even more here. So you can get lots of your backgrounds, and you can even add, your own. So no big difference between that. And under the themes, that's where you're picking your light, dark, whether you like a blue, orange, yellow, green theme. Fonts give you your default sizes for whether on the applications. I always make mine bigger because I'm getting old. And then some questions about what do you want to see on your toolbars. Back on the theme, one of the things that I really like about the Linux with these is when I go to customize, I can create my totally own theme with the controls and borders and icons. But this is what's really nice. Under the pointer, this has some choices, and I can easily make my mouse as large as I need it. Sometimes a feature that you don't find in all operating systems. Now, here's an example. There's only 4 choices in this one for the pointer. But if I go to my Mate, I have more, and that's probably because I went and updated to a point version and got some more, no big deal, more pointer choices. All right. One of the things that GNOME had a problem with is you did not get very many options in changing settings. You saw the opposite in KDE. KDE probably has the most. So if you're somebody who really wants to modify and customize, Orv said KDE is the one you want to run, and I would agree. I like my Mate because it's kind of in between. The GNOME had to get a separate third-party program for a while called GNOME Tweaks to get more options. And in here, we have some tweaks also for Mate. And this is where the Ubuntu team has made a few differences. It's easy to, all of them have the option to show your different desktop things on what you want to see. Here's what I want you to really focus in on. We saw that I had a couple menu choices and Orv had 3. Mate, Ubuntu went crazy. They will let you change the panel outlook for 7 different ways. Familiar is what they're doing right now, and that has the menu at the top, as you can see. If we go to the contemporary, and I have to close out of here so you can actually see it. Not only do you have your menu, but at the top, you have quick access to search all of your files, documents, music, pictures, and video. And that's what they feel is modern. The rest of it, it looks pretty much the same. If we go back to the tweak, and you want a more Microsoft looking, we switch to the Redmond. And notice we lose the top panel and everything is in the bottom panel like Windows. And if I click on the menu, they said, okay, we might make it look a little bit more like Redmond, but we're going to keep it the same menu that we like. And if you want some other choices and you want to look like a Mac, Cupertino is where they are located. And you end up with the modern, with the files, documents, those things at the top, and your little Docker at the bottom. So, oh, Mutiny. A lot of people like the Unity menu that Ubuntu made that you saw with Cal on the side. So the Mate team, they created one. Instead of being Unity, it's Mutiny. So if you really like to be able to have changes, this one really gives you the opportunity to make your different choices with your desktop. Now, does that make this program work any better? No, because it's still Ubuntu on the bottom. So I'm going to change it back to the familiar. Oh, no, I got to show you the traditional, because this is those of us who are really the old GNOME or old Ubuntu people. This is the desktop that we love so much, and that's because GNOME 2 had a drop down for applications, a drop down for your places, and for your system. And that way you didn't have one big massive one. I really like this. That was what was big about GNOME 2, and then they changed it so you can give it back to that if you want. I'm going to go back. I lost my favorites there. Get it back to familiar. And you see it's instant, so you can change it all the time you want. All right, moving on. Mate also has a welcome center, and this one is Ubuntu's version. There's a slightly different one for Mate in the Mint. You can do introductions, talk about the features, but they have a getting started. So as a new person, you come here to get your extras and your updates for the first time, get your drivers, set your language, and you can do some customization. So this helps out the new person real well with that. You also have a software that we're going to go to later. The themes we saw before, the desktop layout we saw, browser selection. Most Linuxes come with Firefox, but they're saying we know people have choices. And they have all the other browsers, including Microsoft Edge, that you can install and run along with it. And I think that's pretty special to make it really easy for a new user to get everything kind of to the way they want back. Let's take a look at software, because one of the unique things about Ubuntu Mate is that they have not what everybody else has. You've already seen for both the last two and before, so the software store, the software center, but they have changed it differently. And what they have is the software boutique. They have categories at the top for all their different software that you can add. It makes this one of the easiest ones for a new user. If we go to accessories, just to go, for example, here are the programs. You get a description of it, you can get more details, and then you hit the install button and add it. Now, we've talked about Etcher. They said this isn't supported by Ubuntu, but you can still install it, because a lot of people want that to make those CDs or the thumb drives. If we go to graphics, again, there's the dark table that Cal mentioned. Descriptions, install. And this is the way you install, because pretty much the programs that they have listed are pretty much the programs that most users would want. And they have the category with Office, Internet, programming for those that are programming, sound and video, access, system tools. And here's one thing neat. No, that's fixes. There, more software. Here is their software store. This would be very similar to the one that we saw both with Orv in GNOME and with Cal with GNOME and Orv with KDE. This would install the software store, which also, notice this, it also lets you get deb files, flat packs, and snap. Now remember, Ubuntu was really strong on snap. In fact, Ubuntu is making it harder to get flat pack. But Mate says, no, we want to let you get anything you want, even the deb package. And then here's the Synaptic Package Manager, which is the little bit one in between before you go to the command line. So easy to install software for beginning users and advanced users. We talked about the workspaces, and with these, I would, if I go to a workspace, open up the software, then it would show up in that. I can probably right click. In mine, I can right click and move it to easily move it to a different workspace. Okay, we talked about that, control center, the software. Let's talk about preferred apps. Just to give you an idea, and one of the things that Mate does is give you more things that you can preset for your default preferred apps. Some desktops will give you 2 or 3 categories that you can set. This one gives you a lot. So under Internet, Firefox is the default browser. Here's what's different about the calendar. Most Linux gives you Thunderbird as the mail reader. Evolution is a program on the same line as Outlook, Microsoft's Outlook. It's a task manager, it's a calendar, it's an email program, it's something else. They have decided to stick with that one rather than switch to Thunderbird. But if you like Thunderbird, you could install it, and then when you drop the menu down, you could pick it as your default. Under multimedia, Orv would have had a program called Eye of GNOME Image Viewer. And so all we've done is we've taken that, made some little tweaks to it, and it's called Eye of Mate Image Viewer. Rhythmbox is the media player, and video player is celluloid. But music player will play the music sound for that, and vice versa. Or as Cal showed, or Orv showed, if you install VLC, you could make that your choice. Under the system, Pluma is the text editor, and it's just made off of the same text editor that was in GNOME, but they made a little modification and they called it Pluma. You could also make Writer your default. The terminal is the Mate terminal, and all that is the same terminal like the Xterm, and made some modifications to make it a little bit slightly different, but this comes with 4 different ones. Tilde is one that drops down, and Xterm, I don't know the difference between that. That's Cal's or Or's department. File manager is Kaja, but if you install a different one, you can change it. Under the Office, of course, it's going to be the LibreOffice suite. And under accessibility, a screen reader and a onboard computer. So this is where you would come that would select what automatically opens when you click a file. Now, if we go to the menu and do a quick look, we'll see that under administration, this is where you'd find the update manager. And I don't see it on here because I just did it. But if you look up at mine, the question was up here in the blue, that's me. There is my icon that jumps up and says, I've got 3 updates. And so if there were updates, there would be one that would pop up and say, you've got updates. But this is also where you can set your printers, go to the welcome. Under graphics, it comes with a document scanner, and Shotwell, we've mentioned it. It's one of the very popular graphic programs. Under the Internet, it just comes with Firefox, but you can add more. Under Office, you get all of the LibreOffice programs plus a PDF reader. Atrial is a PDF reader. It's a version of the one that came with GNOME, made some changes to it, and they call it that. Evolution then is your, use the right screen. I don't like it when it hovers. Just to show you evolution. If you, to me, this means I need to go back to work. I'm retired. I don't need this whole big bit, but you can see that it's a very good program. It is top notch with all of the LinkedIn stuff. I just don't need something this big nowadays. So I'm happy with Firefox to be my email reader and Lightning to be my calendar. But this would be the equivalent for somebody who uses Microsoft Outlook. This would work just the same exact way. that one. Last. All your preferences, all the things you can do to make adjustments to your computer, sound and video. Again, this is what comes default. Add anything you want. There's the system tools, the terminals and the APCUG, and then those actual. Under the control panel, make it wider, you'll see that it doesn't have as many options that KDE had, but some of these have sub options, but these are more than what a lot of stuff come with, very little. So you can go to any of these, and we've talked about some of these different ones before, and make all the changes that you need. I like that they put these into categories, so if I'm looking, there's all my look and feel together. In the one that Orv showed us, it's a whole big long list of stuff. This kind of makes it just a little bit easier. I think Mate's idea is that we want to make it very user friendly and easy to do. I'm thinking that's everything that's on my notes, because we have kind of an outline that we put together that we kind of use for all of these kind of presentations. So I'll leave it here for a second just to show you. I said, as again, there's my menu, and I like it because it has all of that stuff separate. But I have to be honest, I've become more what they call power user. I use keyboard shortcuts to fire up my programs, so I don't need to use a menu as much. I was going to do the control panel, and my control panel has some things different than the Mate one. And you know, I'd have to go one by one to see, but I can tell it's still the same categories, but there are a few extra things. Mint has the Compiz configuration, which is another whole thing I don't mess with, but you can do lots of different fancy things that Cal talked about that you can do with your computer. So that just shows you just a little bit different on that. So Judy, I'll kind of stop there, and any direct questions on just this desktop, and then we can open up for other things.
I don't have any direct questions. That was
Good.
fantastic.
Okay.
I think that's my favorite one because it's visual.
Yes, yes.
Totally. I like the version when you have the categories across the top, whatever.
Yeah, that was the more modern looking one. And I like, you know, for me, I grew up with Ubuntu, which when I was doing GNOME 2, and so I always had the drop downs with the programs, places, and administration. And I thought that made it so easy because all those things were separated.
Cool. I have 3 announcements and 2 questions, and John is going to close the chat box now. So if you have a question about anything during the workshop, you're going to need to raise your hand and ask it. So Betty let us know that there is going to be a Linux Fest Northwest, October 20 through 23 at the Bellingham, Washington Technical College, sponsored by the Bellingham Linux User Group and IT department at that tech college. And she said it's a very worthwhile event. I checked out the website and it looked like it said we're back. So maybe this is the first in-person one they have had since COVID. Regarding how the people who put the Linux things together, I asked Orv how his company, Abbott, took care of it, and he said he and his team managed 800 Linux servers, and that was just a little fraction of what the Linux servers were at Abbott. And they used Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and the way that organization got their money is they probably paid huge bucks for support. And on a personal note, I just had a few minutes ago a red-tailed hawk do a touch and go in my backyard. And when he took off and curved to the left, his tail and everything was absolutely outstanding. The first one I've ever seen, and I've lived here for 45 years. So question, what is the package manager and what is it used for?
Package manager is what distros use to put all the parts together for a program and then use to install it on your distro. We've talked before that there are 3 basic ones plus more for the Debian family. There's the app package manager, PKG2. Fedora has the Red Hat one, so that's RPMs. The Arch has their own package manager. So it's almost like gas in your car. Us gasoline people, we go to the gas station, we get our regular gas. There are people who have to go and get the ethanol gas. There are people that have to go get diesel gas, and there are people that now have to go and plug in. So it's just a tool for creating software packages and installing software packages. Cal or Cal, yeah, because Orv had to leave.
I have a follow-up on that.
Yeah.
What's the difference between the package manager and the software manager?
Oh, software manager is like your store. It only shows you the packages that you can use with your package manager that's in the background. So it's the software store, or the control panel, or I mean the software boutique is the store shelves that show you what you get, and then the package manager runs in the background to install it, to extract it, install it on your computer. So you don't normally, unless you're doing command line, you don't deal with the package manager. You just deal with selecting software and saying computer install it.
If you were going to use Mate and you wanted to install Zoom, would you do it within Mate or would you go to zoom.us?
It would have nothing to do with Mate. Mate is the desktop design and all the tools. Zoom is a program that you install, and you can do it from either one. Now, based on what I said earlier about releases, your computer or your distro might have an older version of Zoom that has been tested perfectly. The newest version of Zoom you can go and get from zoom.us. There is a chance that there might be a little glitch if it hasn't been tested. So you can get it from either way, but if you get it through your software store, you know that it's certified, guaranteed to work with your operating system.
Yeah, a better way I've found is to use a container. So I always get them flat packs, because flat packs are designed to work with your system, and the flat packs are usually people that keep them up to date and balance them off. So flat packs or probably snaps, I find are a better way.
Yeah,
that
I keep
type of
forgetting. Thanks,
software.
Cal. I keep forgetting because that's the newest way for packaging software. And yes, so if you get a flat pack, it works on its own and doesn't really have to integrate as much. But again, as we said earlier, if you install things yourself, you might become responsible for updating yourself. When you do it through the distribution and their software store, they will then take care of updating.
I installed Zoom myself and I'm responsible for updating it myself. I don't have a software store with Windows 10. And you say there are
but with Windows 10, if you got it through the Microsoft store, then it might, but that's the difference. If you get anything through the Microsoft store, they will update. You get it on your own and it's not a Microsoft product, you're on your own.
Yes, and I don't shop at the Microsoft store, but Bill James is putting a presentation about the Amazon store, the Microsoft, the Apple, and the Linux store together. So we will look
Terrific.
forward to him giving that in the future. Now, do you see there's challenges sometimes using Linux and Zoom together?
No, no.
Okay.
The laptop that I did the presentation on, it's a Linux one. The only thing was that on the Windows version, when you're sharing, I can go up and there's an option to hide that top panel that a presenter has. The Linux developers didn't put that in yet, but I was able to drag it to the bottom of my screen and it was out of the way.
And I'm using Linux today, but no problems. It looks just like my Windows.
Yeah, for the most part, it's not. I think I did find out, and I've never rechecked it, that we have the ability. I have just now said, Judy told me to turn off the chat because I have a control as to who you can chat with. I think that in the Linux version, I can still chat, even though it doesn't, but that's just a slight change. But no, for the way it works, it's just about the same. I have no problem with it at all.
And John,
Go
that
ahead.
is a statement. I can still chat.
Yeah. Well, you're a host. Hosts can always chat.
I am a host, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
right. I have not had any problem running anything on Linux. My experience.
And you guys, you come to the workshops and you can see how much the team puts together, and it's once a month, but still it's a great deal of putting presentations together, blah, 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 blah. John has to think of questions. If you have a simple question that you already know the answer to, but you think it might be of interest to other people who are just starting out, send it to John. If you're willing to talk and give the answer to the question, he'd appreciate that. The same thing with a more complicated question. I ask questions, but as the presentations are going on, things pop up, and I shouldn't be the only one who does that.
What we're looking for right now, the team is looking for some people. And I sent out, or Judy sent out for me an email. I would like to have presentations on non-Debian based distributions. We're mostly Debian people. We're mostly Mint people, but there are a lot of good distros out there. And I'd sure like to be able to have a person share with us what makes Fedora different, what makes OpenSUSE different, what makes Arch different, what makes Gentoo, Slackware. I don't know those enough to do it. And the same, we'd like to have some people who might be using some of the different desktop environments. We've only done 3, and there's like 12 total to do. So if you're using a desktop environment different than the 3 we've done, we'd be glad to have somebody share, just like I did, share some of the main points. I have an outline to say, make sure you cover these, this, and this, and help us share desktops, share information, members helping members.
Mm-hmm. Oh, look, Judy has her hand raised.
Yes, Judy.
I have more questions. Number one, I thought that calendar that you said you didn't need, I could use that kind of calendar. I would like to see it demoed. I don't know if anybody else would, but a demo is a heck of a lot better than trying to figure out how to use it yourself. If it's something new, a quick demo on something like that you use all the time, that you swear it's the greatest thing that came down the pike. I have a utility apps presentation, and I ask attendees, if you have an app that you use that you swear by, send me the information. I'll include it in my presentation. We'd like little mini presentations on stuff like that you used for Linux. Again, it helps out the Linux team, and they really appreciate it.
Yeah, we have a section for questions. We have a section for software, section for distros, section for desktops, section for terminal.
And I do have to share with you that I sent that email that John referenced to 174 people. Those were the unique addresses of attendees that attended the last 2 Linux workshops. I believe John heard from one person, and he contacted me first, and then he asked if he could ask the question, and yes. So he asked John a whole bunch of questions. I got a very lengthy email with Windows questions. I thought it was about Linux, but that's okay. I sent those to Bill James, and he answered all of those questions. And then I had another one that I answered all the questions because I knew the 4 answers. One person actually had Linux questions. And, you know, are we wasting our time here?
Nobody
You
offered
know,
to help.
I don't
either.
know, but I'm the person who sends everything out, and it's like give to everybody, and on the other end it's take, but there's no reciprocity. Would appreciate that. Absolutely. We spend hours doing this. Sometimes I put in almost a 40-hour work week with APCUG. Would love to get new ideas on anything. My, you know, 2nd and 4th workshops about anything but Linux, so to speak. Would love stuff for that. I get turned down more than I get a yes from people who give the presentations at their groups. They don't have to create it. They've already created it and given it, and their members have loved it. We say this is warts and all. None of us are professionals. We all goof up almost every time we do something. Over to Bill James, because I'm off my soapbox now. Bill, you're on.
Oh, I just want to thank John and Orv and Cal for the great presentation. And today I have my Linux hat on. I'm using a Linux computer. And I want to say that it's been really a great opportunity to learn. And I hope everybody's taking advantage of that. And I just installed Microsoft Edge on my Linux laptop here, and it's working beautifully. So it's nothing that is too difficult to do. Just listening to John and Orv and Cal's presentations has opened my eyes, and so I really enjoy my Linux experience. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And I have to say that is a new Bill James, because at the beginning, it really wasn't anything he was interested in, but he was kind enough to keep coming to each and every meeting. And then last December, he went, I think I'm going to become a Linux person. And he did, and he's embraced it wholeheartedly. My team member, Dave Melton, hasn't been here the last couple of times helping because he's doing 2 big remodels on his house, and he has, you know, sorry, they need me for something, so he doesn't want to be called away during a presentation, but he'll be back. George, you're on.
I was only half listening because I was doing my taxes.
You must
But
be later than us.
oh yeah, we get till the end of the month. Well, actually, we get till May 1st because it's a Sunday on May.
We got it.
But they've all gone on strike now anyway, so we don't know what's going to happen.
Oh, no.
What do you think, or maybe you can do this for a future presentation, about the Google making their secure source verification available, which just happened just this last, and they're doing it for free. So it's an interesting, and I would like to know what distributions are going to take advantage of that.
We have somebody that would be able to see, if it's one of the team, they have to research it, blah, 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 put the presentation together. But if somebody is already knowledgeable about it, they could put a quick, 10-page PowerPoint together, a little demo or whatever, and boom, it's done.
Yeah, there's
so as I know that Google has just announced it, And essentially it's available for the developers. But I haven't heard any back from, any of the teams that say that, they have like the good housekeeping seal of approval. That's essentially what it'll come to. It's part of the trend, I think, to where all organizations have to government and everything, but now also commercial, verify every piece of sub-program, every piece of software, even if it's referenced or comes in a package.
Yeah, well, I think it's a great,
yeah,
by
it sounds
the
like
way,
a great deal.
is
But
anybody
I
coming
think
up
it's
to
just
Vancouver?
announced.
Is anybody coming up to Vancouver for the Linux open source software conference? It's a bit expensive, but there is a hobbyist price if you can convince them that you're active in the community, which seems to be like, I have a GitHub account with something going on in it.
So when
But Vancouver's starting that May 5th, and it's a week-long conference. I certainly can't afford the full package.
are you going down to the Bellingham conference?
No, wasn't aware of it.
I announced it. But that's okay.
I was doing my taxes.
Oh, that's right. You were doing, you're not due till the end of the month. Come on, you could have done it at the other time.
Well, I do my taxes before I hand them over to the tax guy before he makes a mess of it.
You're one of those. Kevin,
Absolutely.
you're on. From Canada above me on the West Coast, all the way down to Florida. How about that?
And it is a sunny day today, and I think it's pretty gorgeous from what I understand. When I was out there earlier, the temps were beautiful. My question is pretty simple. I think I heard of a distro, I think it's considered a distro, called Zorin. I think it's Zorin. And it seems to have 3 different packages within itself, a fast one, and a one for old equipment, that kind of thing. And I was just wondering if anybody had heard of it and what people's thoughts were on it.
Yeah, it's one that it's on our list of ones that will be excellent for beginners because it's easy. They're after the Windows users. So it's one that's on our list of good ones. I just happen to be Mint guy, say I like the Mint one the better, but yeah, we've had the Zorin is an excellent one. And in fact, if you pay for it, you get even more desktop options.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, Judy. Oh, thank you very much, John. I appreciate it. I just read a bunch about it one night, and it sounded like a possibility. I've got a lot of little. I inherited a bunch of little, all sorts of little tablets and things. It's an ASUS. It was a Windows 8 machine. The screen comes apart from the keyboard, I think, and all sorts of stuff. So I've got all these little tablets, and I'd love to get one running on Linux. The time I have tried, I think I crashed the box, and I tried to get Google's little operating system there, whatever that thing was called, and it just wouldn't do squat for me. So anyway, so I'm looking to see if I can get a light version of Linux that'll run on a relatively small system, so I can have a little tablet to use. That's all. So,
and you just named it yourself. It's called Linux Lite.
Right.
Okay. And so the underlying operating system of Linux Lite will be sufficient for this kind of box, right?
Yeah. It's
Perfect.
kind of designed, for older ones, lightweight. So yeah, see if you can download and give Linux Lite a try on that.
Very good.
And Kevin,
Yes.
download. Next month, you can ask questions that you need help with, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I said, if you download it, next month, you might have some questions that you need help with, and the team can answer them for you.
That sounds wonderful. And I did get your your sheet, I think it was John, about the Linux Wednesday workshop team would like our help. And having had to put up, having to give presentations in the past, I know this can be a real pain in the butt to have to figure out, but part of me wanted to review the 27 YouTube videos that I think you guys said you posted, because some of these I think would be good just to present again. You know, I don't know how many people are changing in here, but I know that because of the Linux Wednesday workshops, you guys have given me more of an impetus to get more interested in Linux. I mean, I've heard of Linux for a long time, but you know, I've got a flash drive that I boot my Windows 10 my Windows 10 laptop often with Linux, just so I can do certain things that I can't do with Windows. And so you guys are good, but there's certain things I think I'd like to know. And maybe can I give a suggestion of a topic right now?
Sure.
I know that you can take a package or take a distro and burn it to a flash drive in such a way that you can boot the computer with that. And I love that. I think that's great stuff for a lot of different reasons. But there are times that I think I would like to get something else in there. For example, maybe I want Google Chrome to be in there in addition to Firefox, or maybe I think Zoom runs on Linux. Maybe I'd like Zoom to come if it doesn't come on that particular distro. And a step-by-step guide to building that final bootable strip that says, okay, this is, now you're going to install it because you've taken an existing distro, you have added the software you want to add to it, and now you can create your own bootable drive, which in turn would allow you to either install it on something or run it on something.
Cal, do you include any of that in some of the classes you give at the Cajun Clickers?
Actually, no, I try to install on hard metal,
Okay.
and I've installed permanently on USBs, but what he said, you just install it and then you can change it after. There's no reason to kind of get it all ready before you dump it in, I think. But
well, for me, the reason is, if I understand what you're saying, the reason for me is there's like I have a flash drive that I use to boot my laptop, and it's got all the tools for Linux Mate or Linux Mate, excuse me, for the version I have. But if I want to add something else to that, then I have to boot it up and I have to add it, and then I have to do what the heck I'm trying to do. And I don't want to take that extra time to install something when I'm actually just trying to boot up with the flash drive I have. I hope I'm being clear.
Yeah,
Yes.
you are, Kevin, and we'll do we'll cover part of that, but I did the presentation a little bit back. Look for the one that was talking about persistence.
John?
Yeah, John.
Yeah, I got to run, but just a quick for Kevin.
Raise
I
hand.
know nothing about using Rufus or Belina Etcher. I got based on one of the presentations from the group, and I tried Belina Etcher, forget it, and I threw it out the window. Had no idea what was going on. I used Rufus and had no understanding of it. It worked great right out of the box. And the nice thing is it has two features, a try me feature and an install feature on Rufus. I did the try me feature. That way I didn't screw up the computer, and it worked great.
Thank you.
So also, Judy, if you could send me your email, because I missed the one presentation for Linux and ham radio, and I was extremely interested in attending that one, and something got fouled up.
You
And
as Dale let you know, you were in the BCC, so check your spam folder. I don't know why you didn't receive it on your end.
yeah, I did check with Dale, but I just, I just trying to get the word out, because I like attending these when they come up. So anyhow, and I like them. They're good. And I don't, what I know about computers is enough to blow them up. That's about the extent of my knowledge. Anyhow, I got to check out of here and go. Thank you for putting up with me in this, and I appreciate it. And you folks have a great day.
Don't forget to
Thank-
use raise hand
Thank you,
option
John.
next time because we lost somebody who wanted to do a question. Donna, you're on.
Yes, I agreed with you, Judy, that the Mate Ubuntu or Ubuntu Mate looked very interesting. What I want to do is ask John, will he switch from Cinnamon Mate to Ubuntu Mate, or is he still think the cinnamon version is sufficient?
I don't use the cinnamon. I don't like it. I use the
No,
mate
I
on
know.
mint. Yeah, I
But
use
would
them.
you- But
yeah.
would you go to Ubuntu's mint? No,
Ubuntu mate.
yeah, would you go to that?
I would if I liked Ubuntu.
Okay, you don't like Ubuntu, okay.
There's some, it's politics.
Oh,
all right.
Ubuntu has just come out with a cinnamon version that it's
Right.
gonna
Yeah.
tomorrow come out.
Yep.
And it will have the same, John just went over today, Mate from Ubuntu and Mate from Mint.
Right,
And so there's some issues between the two. I don't know, I might in the next month or two talk about the issues. So it's which do you like, Mint's approach or Ubuntu's approach? Is one consideration. And the Mate is kind of whether you want Mate cinnamon or Ubuntu cinnamon. So there's several questions there.
all
Great
right, thank
presentation.
you, Cal.
But yeah, but to answer Donna, I would use the Ubuntu Mate. That's why I did that presentation today, because I like it. It has a few different features than the Mint Mate, because everybody can make their recipes a little bit different. But I just like the Mint or MX as my base for distros.
Well, it's a big learning curve if I switch out of mint, so cinnamon. So anyway, I just was asked curious.
Yeah,
'Cause
now
it
you
looks
can.
interesting. It simply just looked interesting.
Yeah,
But everything works
but-
right now with cinnamon mint. I'm so thrilled
That's good.
everything's working. That's the most important part.
I'm happy to. But what you can do is make a thumb drive for the new Ubuntu cinnamon and see how close it is to the cinnamon that you like on Mate. And then again, that's what we say. You either choose the distro because of the distro that philosophy or that you like, and then pick from their desktops, or you say, I'm strictly this kind of a desktop, but I have 4 or 5 different distros I can pick from. So
So
a lot of
this-
choices.
But with Ubuntu, they're going to change it all the time. So I just want the stable releases, I guess is what.
No, they're going to they have a 2-year long-term release, just like Mint does.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's actually good for 5 years. But everybody makes a little bit changes, and if they use the direct cinnamon, because cinnamon is a product of Mint, if they use the direct cinnamon, then it'll be the exact same. If they have a cinnamon team, then they'll take Mint cinnamon and modify it if they want to make it a little bit
I've
different.
already looked at it, John.
Yeah.
It's quite different.
Is it really? Okay.
Another
Thank you.
demo.
That's what I wanted to know. Thank you very much.
Are you writing those down, John? Cal, and Cal has 2 things to do in the future there that he mentioned. Donna, are you going to go to the Bellingham Linux Festival?
No, sweetheart, too many things are going on in my life.
Okay, just checking.
All right.
Bill James.
I'm using Mint, the Vera edition, which I like very well. So that might be something to consider, because this is the one that I think Cal recommended earlier. And to me, it works quite a bit. If you're a Windows user and coming from as a Windows user to Linux, this might be the better choice.
The Mint.
Just my opinion, but someone might.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Discuss-
I've always recommended the cinnamon. The problem So you get somebody like John who has used the previous type of Linux, and he's like wants to relive that previous type also. So there's that consideration. But if you're coming directly from Windows and you've never used Linux, then I think Cinnamon is a very good choice.
Yes.
And Donna, the next workshop you attend, would you please look for Bob Baxter's name? He has a new backdrop and it is of the Seattle skyline.
Oh, okay.
And in the upper left-hand corner, it says Kegs. They are the computer enthusiasts of
Seattle. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the first time he had it today, but he's gone. Are there
Yeah,
any
Judy, one more thing. What Bill James was saying is Vera, that is cinnamon mint that Cal was talking about. They're the same thing.
Well, Vera is the new name for the point release. Vanessa
Right.
was the first one, and we're in Vera, and then we're going to be getting a new one soon.
Well,
So
anyway, I
that's
have
just the
Vera
point.
as well. That's all I
Yeah.
want to say. Okay.
Yeah.
Is the next one going to start with W?
Then the 22 version, but 21.2 and 3 will be other V girls.
But the next one, when will it be a W name?
Next spring.
May it be Wanda. Anyway, Rick Nash, you have a question.
Yeah, I was gonna say I wouldn't mind helping out doing a presentation on something. Like I did this this laptop right here, which is an old Toshiba with it had Windows XP. It's from 2000. It's a Portage. It's actually one of the first tablets ever made. And I added Windows or Linux. This is called Antiques Linux, ANTIX Linux. It comes with 3 window managers. I'm only using one. I'm not used to these ice and rocks and different managers. But the problem I have is some of the, I also have an XFCE, but I tried to Zoom with that the other day. And because I'm putting this on older hardware, the CPU can't, sometimes I get lag in the videos and stuff. So I don't know. I'm trying to figure out like a way, like I might be able to do a presentation on something like this and show it. Like I'm using an iPad right now to Zoom into the meeting. What I'm saying though, is that I have stuff like this and I'd be willing to share. I just don't know if I can I know I can't plug this in with the Citrino processor and join this meeting and then show the desktop like in a traditional manner that you are.
His email address is jkennedy@apcug.org. Rick, get in touch with him.
Okay,
Great.
will do.
Thank you. A volunteer. Woo. How exciting.
Antique, that's a good one. And that is the problem, you know, the older you get with equipment, it's not necessarily a Linux problem, but it's Zoom wanting to have a certain level of hardware to make it run right. So the Antique might not have an XFC. You said XFC didn't work?
The XFCE is also on something that was running around Windows XP. So it's, I think it may be 2001 computer. It's got double the RAM as this, and I can actually zoom on it, but there was a little lag there. I can tell by going to, like, if I go to a website where there's video and stuff, like this Centrino, it has actually a i386. It's got, I think, 2 gigs of RAM. And it's non-PAE, so the Antiques was the only thing that would work on this older box. And the person that was showing those little Asus tablets, if he goes online and Googles that actual model tablet, says Linux on Asus, this tablet, he will probably get about 10 or different versions of different Linuxes that will work. And Linux now is a lot like, so when I put XFCE, I put the latest version of Linux Mint on that older computer. Now, I think maybe if I went with Debian LMDE, which is the original version, that's the backup in case something happens to Ubuntu with Linux Mint, then like in other words, I could have put an older version lower, and I might be able to run the Zoom on that better, and then show that desktop.
Well,
But that's why I didn't answer the email last time, because I actually was putting that on there. I'm kind of sick of all the old hardware that you can actually put a new version of Linux on, and they have all the drivers and all the support for some of this stuff, that you can actually make a good computer for a kid, where you can get some, I can watch a YouTube video with not too much problem. Sometimes they have to lower the settings on the bit rate coming over. Instead of HD and, way up there, I can lower it to 480, which is plenty. I mean, compared, I'm old, so I remember those old videos. We used to use a 1 megapixel camera.
Yeah.
But there was
Thank
only
you very much.
Get in touch with John.
Okay, we'll do.
Thank you. Kurt, I'm glad you raised your hand, because I was going to call on you anyway.
I don't know why. I'd just like to address a couple things about Zoom in particular. Do a lot of Zooming, do a number of Zoom hybrid meetings. One of the biggest problems that we run into, particularly with audio, is people using Wi-Fi and having a Wi-Fi signal that is either not strong or may be interrupted. And Zoom does not tolerate that well. Okay, it's particularly bad with audio. You don't notice it as much in the meetings we're doing with video, just because the video doesn't change that much and it's not that important. A comment to Bill James in particular. I think you're driving your microphone too high, because your voice is very muddled, and I know that's not the way you normally speak.
Yeah.
So that's what I wanted to mention. So you had a question for me?
No, I was just going to call on you, but even though you took your hand down.
I think Kurt's correct, because I did increase my microphone volume. I will turn it down, and we'll see how that works.
I appreciate that, because I just turned my speaker down and then I turned it back up for the next person who was talking.
Oh.
George is our last question, and then we are out of here, because I would like to have breakfast.
I've turned it down, Kurt. How is that?
Perfect.
Much
Better.
better.
And I did that because I thought it was too low. So that's a good learning experience.
And the dogs couldn't help you with that.
No, they're both asleep. Let's just leave them that way.
Hey, George.
I'd like to contribute to after the middle of May, and maybe when we've seen a couple of the distros pick up on the Google secure source stuff, and also like a session that emphasizes the security issues around Linux, because GitHub has been attacked a few times, and I'd like to maybe have a look at the vanilla distro, which is supposedly more secure, as it's supposed to be a read-only OS. So yeah, if there's an interest, I don't know how many people out there today would be interested in a topic or a session that just focuses on security in Linux.
I think it would be interesting, and we don't, it's knowledge. You're sharing your knowledge with people, and I don't use Linux. I certainly could. If of all that I've learned, I've attended every single Linux workshop, and I get more knowledge all the time. So yes, security is an aspect, even though people say, don't worry about it. Well, it would be nice to know if with some things you have to worry about it.
Yeah, it'd be nice to know when they talk about the GitHub, did they get, hacked because a human didn't do what they were supposed to, or what?
Well,
So
people
I
have been
think it would be
seeding.
good.
People have been seeding viruses into GitHub, very similar named libraries, and people are absorbing those, picking up the wrong library, and they get an infection, and then they start to distribute that through their applications.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's not just Linux; it's everything that uses GitHub, right?
Yeah, so,
but-
yeah, it would be good to be able to say, now there are some things you need to watch out for if you're a Linux user, because for so long you didn't have to worry about those kind of problems. But now, for me though, since I don't go to GitHub, I wouldn't have to worry about that, but there are people that go to GitHub. So
But
yeah,
you
that
pick
would
up
be
a
good.
package that is using stuff that's been put in GitHub.
But I'm hoping I'm going through my distro who has vented that package so that it, it's coming from them. That's why I guess I say if you stick with your distro and their repositories, then you should be better, because they're supposed to be monitoring those.
Yeah,
And-
it'd be interesting to see how quickly they pick up on this Google secure source.